The developer of the Dakota Access Pipeline is now suing Greenpeace and a handful of others in state court for blocking their pipeline so violently and for so long. To that I say, well, it is about damn time. In Trump's beautiful fossil-fueled utopia, the oil companies are getting a little scrappy. Bismarck, North Dakota-based News 957 has the full story. Texas-based Energy Transfer Partners filed a civil lawsuit on Thursday, a week after a judge tossed the company's $1 billion racketeering claim out of federal court. Judge Billy Roy Wilson said he found no evidence of a coordinated criminal enterprise. ETP's state lawsuit makes similar claims to its federal lawsuit that Greenpeace and activists conspired to use illegal and violent means to disrupt the pipeline construction, damage the company, and advance their quote-unquote extremist agenda. It is good to hear an oil company use that language. Now, Greenpeace accuses ETP of using the legal system to bully quote-unquote peaceful advocacy. The group says it's confident the state lawsuit will meet the same fate as the federal claim. Now, do you remember the Dakota Access Pipeline protests? Boy, they seem so long ago. Times have sure changed. Now, under the Obama administration, environmentalist crazies were emboldened and frankly legitimized. And so they came from all across North America and they converged on North Dakota. And they set up a disgusting hobo camp, the kind they are so famous for. Camp Cloud, anyone. Now, they did this in an attempt to block the nearly $4 billion Dakota Access oil pipeline. Just like they do in Canada, they used a small minority of First Nations as a prop to stop development and jobs for the majority of First Nations. After Trump came into office, he nearly immediately signed the pipeline into life. He called in the Army Corps of Engineers and got the pipeline pumping oil in just a few short months. It was gorgeous and efficient. Anyway, probably my favorite part of the Greenpeace response to the lawsuit is that Greenpeace accuses ETP of abusing the legal system to bully, quote, peaceful advocacy. Well, I know 2016 was 2.5 years ago, but I haven't forgotten just how violent those protests really were. On Election Day 2016, environmental radicals Jessica Resnicek and Ruby Montoya began what they called a direct action campaign against the pipeline. In the few months that followed, they burned at least 5 pieces of heavy equipment on the pipeline route, but they weren't done. In March of 2017, the two began using oxyacetylene cutting torches to damage the pipeline valves. In Iowa, they began deliberately vandalizing the pipeline to delay the completion for weeks. After that, they used those torches to cause damage up and down the pipeline through Iowa and South Dakota. They only stopped when they ran out of supplies. Why didn't they just get a job on the pipeline? Anyway, then after that, they returned to arson as a tactic using tires and gasoline-soaked rags to burn multiple valve sites and electrical units, as well as heavy equipment located on the pipeline easements throughout Iowa. Then in May 2017, they tried to pierce the valves in southeast Iowa, Wapello County, with a cutting torch. How do we know they did all this horrible vandalism? They held a press conference July 24th, 2017 in front of the Iowa Utility Board and admitted to it all. The press conference wrapped with the two women using crowbars and a hammer to damage a sign on state property, which then prompted state troopers to take them into custody. One October day in 2016, other so-called peaceful protesters burned cars and mountains of plywood on a bridge to create a roadblock, and according to the New York Post, one crazy woman pulled out a .38 and fired at least 3 rounds at cops that day. What was happening on the Dakota Access Pipeline worksites could easily be described as terrorism. In fact, it was by at least 80 United States members of Congress who signed a letter calling on AG Jeff Sessions to investigate the activists for acts of terrorism against energy infrastructure in the United States. I hope this actually isn't the last lawsuit against Big Green for what they did in North Dakota. The activists left the sparsely populated state with a teeny tiny tax base with at least a $1 million bill to clean up all the garbage these so-called keepers of the earth left behind. It was a mess that nearly resulted in, if you can believe it, an environmental catastrophe. Just look at this. From the Washington Times. Crews are racing to clear the camps before the snow melt washes trash, waste, and debris into the Cannonball River. Yes, friends, these earth worshippers and tree huggers left behind 48 million pounds of trash and dozens of broken down, leaky cars. And just as a side note, so you realize just how truly awful these folks were and I suppose continue to be, they abandoned their pets when they finally were sent packing from Town Hall. 2 dogs and 6 puppies were found and rescued at the main Dakota Access Pipeline camp by Furry Friends Rock and Rescue. Look, I'm very happy, though, to see resource companies fighting back against radical environmentalists looking to harm their businesses, harm projects, kill our jobs, and hurt our economy. I think the ball, though, really started rolling back with Resolute Forest Products. The Montreal-based multinational forestry company has been suing Greenpeace, Stand Earth, and several individual activists in court for a few years now, both in California and in Ontario. The company claims environmentalists defamed it by saying the company was harvesting wood in areas that it wasn't. The company is basically suing them for just spreading lies. The scope of that lawsuit now has been narrowed, but Resolute is still proceeding. They have absolutely had enough. Now, I hope this trend of companies fighting back finally comes to Canada, because I don't know about you, but I am absolutely sick of oil companies in Canada sucking up to the environmentalist movement out of one side of their mouths and then complaining about the damage to their companies and our jobs caused by the regulations and policies they themselves helped draft in consort with those very same environmentalist groups. Case in point, Suncor CEO Steve Williams. He endorsed Rachel Notley's carbon tax on all of your families. And in an exclusive investigation by me, we discovered that Steve Williams was absolutely instrumental in creating an emissions cap for the Alberta government alongside radical environmentalist Sephora Berman. They appeared on a panel to talk about it together. Now, that cap effectively strands much of Alberta's oil in the ground. But just last week, on his way out the door, now that his tenure is done at the helm of the company, Williams is complaining about the government meddling in the industry. You know what? Pick a lane, Steve. You can't have it both ways. We need less social license peddling from the likes of Suncor and more punching back like Resolute and Energy Transfer Partners. Alberta has some of the highest numbers of business insolvencies in the entire country. People's jobs and their businesses were chased off by bad environmental policy. They're bankrupt. Maybe it's time for these environmental groups to experience a little bit of that same bankruptcy too. For the Rebel.media, I'm Sheila Gunn Reid. Hey, did you know that there's another way to get your Rebel Media fix? All of our premium shows are available as downloadable podcasts. You can get them at therebel.media/listen or on any of your favorite podcast directories. And another great way to help us that doesn't cost you anything is to leave us a 5-star review.